Hello and thank you. I'm really excited to be doing this talk today. There's a lot going on in the world, and I wanted to walk through how this could impact your thinking of digitization, all the way from design through operation. This is a car configurator, and I can go through this and I can change the colors of the car, but it's interesting because it's the full CAD model. So I can spin around it, look what's going on. Um, I can change the different variants of what's going on with the tires and see all the different options that might be interesting to me. And I can go inside, and beyond the CAD model, it's got my the stitching and the leather and all the different components just right. So what's really interesting about this is it gives me the ability to have a full-on customized experience, but it's based in the full CAD models, the full life cycle of these products. It's not an end solution decimated file. Why is this important? There are a lot of big companies thinking about how do they optimize the entirety of their operations. This is a BMW factory plant, and in here you see like process simulate from Siemens. You'll see the full CAD models for the KUKA robots. You'll see in the background there's people walking around for like checking for OSHA compliance, and those are iClone avatars. There's one there in the back, and they're checking for things like clearances and fits, and it's all physically and visually realistic so that you can train up your robots in here to see what the world would be like when they get deployed. And this is what Siemens looks like um, before it went into the system. Here's another example. This is Amazon's fulfillment centers. This is they have these robots that pick up these carts and move around. This is real. This is real. This is simulated. This is simulated. This is simulated. So the idea here is that you're building physically, visually realistic experiences end to end. And it goes from the design stage through the manufacturing and operation stage all the way out through the marketing stage. And so the thing that these three scenes that I've just showed you have in common is that they are true to life representations, but they're using the same back end underlying data sets. It allows you to take things like digital twins, so you can do your product creation, all the way through production automation, so you can tune how your products look, how they're presented to customers, how they're presented in big decision-making experiences. You can also apply generative AI wherever you need to. So in this case here, we have these bottles, and we're adding a background into this perfume. And then you can create new experiences that we haven't really got to touch into so far yet. For example, you could say, hey, in that big factory, if I'm configuring the work cell to have a different robot arm, I can then use use forklifts to move in and figure out how I'm deploying that robot into the space. And I can actually look for clearances and everything I might want to have. Or in the case that you're seeing here with this Nissan, I could get in, sit down, feel the car around me, check out my distances for all the different pieces, and just really get a feel for it. I could also do things like imagining scenarios. Can I put my gear into this car, and does it fit well, and so forth. So there are a bunch of challenges with doing all of this stuff today. There's a lot of infrastructure that's out there already that's been built up around the limitations of 10, 15 years ago. You'll see a lot of experiences where you take data, you create data in one place, maybe the CAD engineering team, and it functions perfectly, but it doesn't look beautiful because they don't need it to. They need it to work on their designs, but then they have to move those into some other program to do fluid dynamics, and they change the stuff, and then they go into some other program where they want to start to show it to clients and make decisions on what it's going to look like, and to think about the art of what's being built. So they need to make new files for that, and then they take it out to the marketing space and they bring it out, and they want to show it in a configurator, or they want to show it in a TV commercial, and again they have to create it differently. So you've got these series of siloed data, incompatible tools, and it makes for very disconnected teams, and that hurts productivity and business outcomes. It just adds a lot of load to this back end. So we've been thinking about this a lot. We've been working with a bunch of the top companies out in the world, thinking about how they're going to optimize their systems and how they're going to really apply accelerated computing to solve their biggest problems and increase their efficiencies. And Omniverse helps you with that in a bunch of ways. First of all, it is a way to connect in all the tools that you know and love and connect them into the same USD centric, universal scene description centric backend so they can all work nicely together. Second, it enables you to build out interoperable tools that you can create new experiences, and you can have bespoke user experiences for different people in that workflow. Maybe there's a specific tool you need for a modeler and another tool you need for the person that's getting all of the camera feeds so that you can train up your robots on video. But it's the same data infrastructure, but with bespoke tools on top of it. And then finally, you can connect your teams. You can allow them to collaborate and work together and make decisions together in this sort of space. There are already many companies building on top of the Omniverse platform. There's a whole bunch of software partners that are building out tools and experiences. All the videos I showed you before were showcasing the tools that they make and helping them get those built out. And then there's a bunch of people adopting this to go out and solve their problems. So it's an interesting time to see this shift from or an ability for people to break out of these siloed data sets, come together with the tools they love, and then pull them together and solve the problems they need to solve. So I'm excited to be here because I know you all are interested in those kinds of spaces, and I'm curious to see what kind of opportunities you see for yourself. The heart of all of this is universal scene description. This is a framework that allows you to compose infinitely complex scenes. So a lot of times when people start talking about like a file format, and you might think of a USD as a file format, it's not. It's much more than that, and you shouldn't think of it as a file format. Of course, it has things like describing a 3D object and so forth within it, but really, it's what unlocks the ability for you to do composition arcs. So you can say, I have a chair, and I have the kitchen scene, and I have these other appliances, and they all come together in the same scene. But beyond that, that chair has 3 different types of materials that it could be on it. So it could be the red one that you see there, could be a blue one, could be a cloth material or whatever it might have. And all those variants are also contained in the USD. And then by having tools to allow you to switch between which variants you want to see at the moment, you can then recompose the scene into exactly what you need. This is really important for AI as well, because this is where you are able to start creating synthetic data. So I could create this scene with an infinite number of combinations depending upon the materials used for those chairs, the time of day, where the light's coming from, if the light in the room is on or off, and if it's all just sunlight, different locations where those pots and pans are, the different flooring that might go in. All these differences are important for generating training data for vision systems so that robots can move around, or you can do defect detection in the manufacturing process. You want to look for scratches and rust and misassemblies. So you need to create all the training data for that. And you go. So this universal scene description allows for you to describe these incredibly complex worlds. And then through the Omniverse platform with rendering and physics and all those kinds of things, you can get the physically correct. There's an alliance for OpenUSD for this. This is a standardization process to go through to get OpenUSD going. USD started with Pixar, and they built it to build really complex movies. And all of the teams that had to come together to work together on a movie. And now USD is expanding into the industrial space. So you can see folks, I mean, clearly there's an Adobe, Ansys, Autodesk, Hexagon, Foundry, like all these folks are coming together to build out this industrial description world of the world. And USD is not only that description and that composition level, but it's also, as a part of that composition, is ability to reference. So I can grab files from other sources and then show them in the scene. One way I can do that is I could actually convert it into USD. Another way I could do that is I could create a schema to represent my data. Maybe it's not 3D data at all. Maybe it's building information data, so BIM data, and I could use a schema to describe that data into the scene. So the life expectancy of light bulbs could be on the light bulb. So 2D data getting mapped into the scene. And then the last one is a file format plugin. So I could have some proprietary format that is opaque to all of these other apps and all that kind of stuff. But in USD, I can expose the API for access to that. And now my proprietary format can then show up in the scene whenever there's a renderer that understands how to use that. So Omniverse is this platform. It's a set of APIs that allows you to handle and work with USD and then to render it out and to simulate it. So that spans all the way through the design phase, the manufacturing phase, the operations phase, out into advertising. You can take that car, design it and build it in your CAD packages, enhance the design through maybe you're using Fluent to do the fluid dynamics. Cool, use that. And then go into the manufacturing process where you use Siemens and you manage out your process. And then you keep on rolling, go all the way into the car configurator, into the advertising space. And what's kind of cool about that is the end users could be configuring their car and they could be leaning on data that's where is that car in the manufacturing process. And if something in the design changes, it flows right through into the marketing materials. The other part is there's a lot of opportunities for Gen AI to enhance quite a few aspects of this. So like you could generate backgrounds, you could generate, in this case, they generated some rocks and some leaves to give it that sort of like you're out moving around in the world kind of a feel. All right. So what this all means for things like configurators is that you can use the tools you know and love to assemble the scene together, get it into USD, and then build that out into a scene, and then expose that through some sort of configurator app, and then give that to users of the world. And then it doesn't have to end there. You don't have to just go to the one configurator app, but those same content and the same materials can then be used for other parts of your production process down the line. This is an example of how this collaboration works. So you notice in the lower corner in Autodesk Maya, I'm building out a center island, and immediately that's showing up in the main scene. And then in the middle, we have Adobe Substance. And as soon as we change the texture in Adobe Substance, it shows up in the main scene. And up in the top corner, there's Unreal Engine, and I'm putting cabinets into the scene, and immediately it shows up in the scene. So this is USD in action. It's all of those different apps working together with experts in their space, using the tools they know and love to assemble the whole thing together. That works on the entirety of the pipeline. So it could be CAD files or texture files or whatever it might be. And the apps that want to see the entire scene, like Unreal Engine there, would listen to notifications for all of it. Apps that just want to push their changes, like Adobe Substance, can cause the changes to happen and push their changes into the scene, and then they go on their way. So you can also manage which people in your organization can do which parts. So that opens up this sort of end-to-end for this content supply chain. So you have all these tools. All of you could be tool makers too. Like if you're in that tool making space, you can use the Omniverse APIs to power your tools, and you can do more USD manipulation and more rendering, physics simulation, all that kind of stuff. Then, now that the data is all pulled together into a certain place, you can now enable new workflows and experience. Multiple people can collaborate on it. You can build out new kinds of experiences, even for people who don't use 3D a lot. They could now use these scenes. A good example of this would be like in factory planning. You have this thing called a Gemba walk where you tour around the factory. And so you can imagine the 3D scene is constructed with all of the factory. And then the people are walking through it, and maybe they're on computers like we are here, and they're sharing their screens, or maybe they're in the actual factory and they've got an iPad and they're using AR to look around and see what's going on, or whatever goggles they want. Then that person who doesn't really need to know a lot about 3D can draw lines and say, like, the safety rails are in the wrong place, and they can measure things, and they can put measurements on there and say, this isn't compliant. Or maybe they're worried about one of the robot arms reaching into the user, the human walkway space. They can mark that. So they can look for all of those kinds of things, annotate the scene, And then somebody else using a different application completely, a 3D editing application, can then go through the scene, manage all those changes, react to them, and bring it up for the next round of review. So when you're thinking about configuration, that's another place where it goes, is because everything that we put into this digital world is an idea, and we need to have variations of those ideas to try different things and offer options. And that becomes very much like a configurator kind of experience, even if it's for an internal small number of users, small number of clients making big decisions, can sort of play into that. So that's an example of a workflow that could now happen once you have this data all together. And then you have the ability to develop tools and apps. So you can build things like that web configurator I showed, or like that factory planning experience that I just walked you through. What is the specialized area that you're thinking about where there's a gap and a hole? And I think the question is, how can you make use of this idea that all of these large companies are transforming not only digitally but into USD, and using this workflow and this chain of applications together? How can you fit in and find the right spot to leverage this or make use of all the tools in this space? Here's an example with Configit. Their superpower really is that they could do really complex configurations. Making a scene with, like the scene I showed you with just the car in the very beginning, where you could change the tires and stuff like that. That's a pretty simplistic scene. It's got the car. It's complex in the sense that it's the CAD model and all those things, and it's like got all the elements in it. But it's simple in the sense that it's got 4 tires and you can switch between them. The real world is much more complex than that. In the real world, you have to think about things like, where do I work internationally? What options are available in different locales? And so tools like Configit totally help with this. They can build out all the logic systems, and then that data can, one, drive your UI, so website UI that you might have and so forth, or it could drive the scene. So you click a button in the website, it goes through Configit, works through what are the valid options that are happening right now, and then sends the signal off to the scene to change. So Configit is a great example of somebody who's found a really nice critical path piece in that whole workflow, and are starting now to enable this USD infrastructure backend. Here's a scene where we got the car driving through the mountains, but I want this to be my car that I've configured and in my locale. So with this kind of a system, you can then take the various of the color choices, the rack implementations, the different wheels, and the locations, and make it feel like I'm in Colorado, or make it feel like I'm in different parts of the world, to properly affect this. And you can use, again, all of that same infrastructure that we were just using for the car configurator use case, or for the factory planning use case. It all can tie together and come back in. So if you're interested in some aspect of this, you could either be somebody who is looking to build something, like build a tool for others or build a service for others, or you could be somebody who's interested in taking your product and bringing it to market in this kind of a way, all the way from the design, construction, all the way out to the marketing side of it. How do you get in and get started? Well, there's a bunch of companies I showed you before that are really digging into this. There's a few in here that I think are really focused on the configuration space specifically. I'll call out Configit. I think they make sense for just about anybody. Once you get past your proof of concept, I mean, even I would include them in the proof of concept to keep it real simple. And then once you get past your proof of concept, you're going to need some pretty serious logic handling. So I think they're a good one. Katana is another one in here. It's really good. The other ones that did that Nissan one, where you can see the Nissan, you can see it look exactly right. You can put it into your own driveway. You can sit in it with Apple Vision Pro and feel what it's really like. You can like open the trunk and look and see in the carpet and see the texture of the carpet and just feel it all so real. It's really, really interesting. And again, that is not a lot of faked up make work to bring it into Apple Vision Pro. Like, for example, on the dashboard of that Nissan, it is a set of buttons that are actually 3D objects. They're not just like a 8K sticker stuck on there. So when you look around, you can see the depth and the texture of those different elements on the dash. and it just really brings this sense of realism to the whole space. So you can work with any of these kinds of folks. You could also build your own. So take advantage of the Omniverse SDK and the set of APIs that are out there to help you manage USD and help you render that USD into a visually stunning, realistic kind of a space. Then the other part is once you get something built, you can deploy it. You can deploy it however you want. You can have your own servers and run them. You can, Azure or AWS, whatever you want to do there. Or you can run them on GDN, the Graphics Delivery Network. This is an NVIDIA service that is optimized for streaming highly visual, interactive experiences off of high-powered GPU instances. So scale around the world, all that kind of stuff. So you have access to that too. So if you have something that you want to just stream to a couple people, maybe you do your on-prem solutions and you keep it all there. If you want something to stream to the world, maybe use GDN. So kind of to recap this, how you get started, go just download Omniverse and start messing with it. Learn how to build your first extension, learn how to think about USD, think about how your workflow might plug into USD. Start thinking about what would it look like if it was like really, really high quality visuals. What AIs would you want to bring to bear? Do you want to use your content to train AIs, or do you want to augment your products or your scenes or your spaces using generative AI in some way? And then pick what you're going to build. So like what part of the space you want to build in and who do you want to partner with to get it built, and then you deploy it. So I'm really excited about this change. And I think change really opens up a lot of opportunities for folks. And the change being an end of data silos across all these long disparate workflows, and then being able to really efficiently pull these all together and bring in high powered accelerated computing stack to this whole workflow. And then the ability for people to use the tools they love, build new tools that they bespokenly need, all accreting value back to the same backbone, is really, really powerful. And it opens up a lot of opportunities for the tool makers of the world. So I'm Paul Cutsinger. You can find me anywhere you find people on the internets. I would love to chat with you more. Have a great rest of the show. Thank you.